The wind whipped along the wooden storefronts, stirring dust into small clouds. She walked slowly, her worn boots crunching against the dirt, the tattered shawl around her shoulders flapping with each step. "Look at her," a boy whispered, nudging his sister. "She waddles like a calf." "She's got no sense," the girl added, giggling. She ignored them, gripping the bucket in her hand tighter. The water sloshed, threatening to spill. Her mother glanced up from the porch, eyes cold. "Try not to make a mess," she muttered, then returned to her sewing. "I'm not bothering anyone," she whispered under her breath, but the words were swallowed by the wind. At the well, the children circled like vultures. "Need a hand, slowpoke?" One jeered, kicking at a pebble that bounced against her boots. I can manage," she said softly, lowering the bucket into the well. Her arms trembled with the weight. "Careful, you'll drown yourself," another boy mocked, laughter spilling from his mouth. She winced, gripping the rope, pulling steadily. Water surged into the bucket, splashing against the wooden frame. She steadied it, murmuring, "Almost got it." A misstep. Her foot caught a stone, and the bucket tipped. Cold water surged over her shoes, soaking her skirt. She gasped, heart racing, as the children doubled over in laughter. "Ha! Look at her now. Like a drowned mouse," the girl shouted. "Bet she can't even carry it back without spilling again," the boy added. Her cheeks burned. She pressed the wet shawl to her chest, trembling. I'll clean it up," she whispered. From the porch, her father grunted, turning his head. "Don't make me tell you again." "I said I'll." She stopped, swallowing the lump in her throat. The words felt small against the crowd's laughter. A storekeeper leaned out of the doorway. "Be careful, girl, or the town will have a new joke by supper." She lowered the bucket with shaking hands, splashes soaking the dirt. I only wanted to help," she said quietly. Another child shoved a wooden cart near her, scattering loose straw. "Clumsy," one yelled. "Watch her topple it all." Her eyes fell to the ground, dust clinging to wet shoes. She lifted the bucket again, careful now, moving toward her house. Each step felt heavier than the last. "Slowpoke. Slowpoke," the children chanted in unison. She didn't answer, only pressed on, the sun beating down, lanterns in nearby shops swinging slightly in the midday breeze. The town seemed to close in around her, wooden boards creaking, wind echoing the laughter. Her mother finally spoke, voice sharp as a whip. "Do you want to be the laughingstock of the street or the house? Hurry it up." I'm trying," she whispered, the words nearly lost. By the gate, a neighbor leaned on a fence, arms crossed. "Even the mule's faster than you," he said. She paused, fingers brushing against the rough wood of the gate, heart hammering. The bucket wobbled. I can do this," she said softly, more to herself than anyone else. Another boy snickered. She talks to herself, too. Her breath caught as the bucket tipped once more, water splashing over her boots, her skirt sticking to her legs. The children laughed louder, and she froze, trembling, staring at the dirt and the puddle forming around her shoes. A heavy silence followed, the town momentarily watching, as if even the wind paused. Her mother looked away, her father's face unmoving, neighbors shaking heads in quiet amusement. She sank to the ground, clutching the wet shawl to her chest, eyes brimming. I only wanted to help," she whispered, voice shaking with humiliation. The market chatter swelled again, laughter ringing over the dirt streets, echoing off the wooden walls. She lowered her gaze, feeling the sun scorch her back, the wind biting at wet sleeves, and the weight of being alone pressing on her like a stone. A stray dog trotted past, sniffing at her boots. She gave it a small, sad smile. Even it seemed to pity her. She rose slowly, water dripping from the hem of her skirt, shoulders hunched but steady. She took a deep breath, the smell of dust and hay filling her lungs. She knew the town had won today, but she whispered to herself, tomorrow might be different. And with that faint hope, she walked on, the tattered shawl clinging to her shoulders, the wind whispering through the empty streets, carrying the echoes of her humiliation across the sun-baked town. She trudged along the dry grasses at the town's edge, boots crunching over sagebrush and loose stones. Her shawl clung damp to her shoulders, a reminder of the water and laughter from the market. "They say she's never had a proper thought," a woman murmured from a porch, rocking slowly. "Couldn't blame her if she did," a man replied, voice low. "Life's too sharp for the slow ones." She pressed on, lips tight, imagining her reflection in the cracked mirror at home. The pale light showed hollow cheeks and tired eyes. I can't let them see me cry," she whispered to the shadows. A child ran past, kicking a small stone. "She's crying again." "Huh." She paused, eyes to the ground. "I'm not crying," she said softly, brushing dust from her skirt. The garden behind her home awaited, a patch of stubborn green. "You'll grow, won't you?" she murmured, kneeling to the soil. Hands pressed gently around tiny sprouts, she whispered encouragement. "Stay strong. Just a little longer." A neighbor leaned from a fence. "Why fuss over weeds? Won't change who she is." I care for them," she said quietly, planting another seed. "It's something I can do right." The sun dipped lower, lanterns flickering in windows along the street. Crickets started their evening chorus. From a distant porch, laughter trickled through the night air. "Poor girl, always alone," an old man muttered. "Maybe she's better that way," a woman said, smoothing her apron. She tightened the shawl around her shoulders, voice soft. "I'm not alone," she whispered to the growing plants. "You're here. You'll stay with me." Her fingers smoothed soil over a tiny tomato shoot. The wind tugged at stray hairs, brushing her cheeks. She could hear the faint scrape of a wagon on the distant road. Her heart quickened. "A horse, maybe," she murmured. Her breath caught as hooves struck the dirt with measured rhythm. Shadows stretched long across the garden, one approaching steadily, quietly. "Hello," she called, unsure, voice trembling yet firm. No answer came immediately, only the soft sound of leather brushing and hooves crunching stones. The figure paused a few steps away, hat tipped low, posture straight. He didn't speak at first. I wasn't expecting anyone," she said, straightening. The figure's voice came then, calm, even. "No harm meant. Just passing through." She studied him, heart still hammering. "You live nearby?" "Just outside town," he said, gaze steady on hers. "Name's Samuel. You're the one folks tease so freely, aren't you?" Her lips pressed tight. "I suppose so." He offered a slow nod, without judgment. No need to answer back to them. Not all of us see the world that way. She looked to the small green sprouts, then back to him. "I thank you." A faint wind shifted the tall grasses, carrying the scent of dust and distant hay. The evening sky glowed amber and violet, lanterns flickering in windows across the street. She sensed the quiet strength beside her, a presence unlike any before. "Tomorrow," he said softly, "you might need a hand. If you want." "I might," she admitted, voice steadier. "I might." The hooves faded slowly into the distance, leaving her with a soft hum of crickets and the whispering sagebrush. She knelt once more in the soil, hands trembling slightly. "You'll grow," she murmured to the garden, to herself, to the quiet stranger who passed by. "And maybe I will too." The lanterns flickered one last time before darkness settled fully. The wind carried the faint promise of something new, a shadow of hope stretching across the lonely, dust-strewn land. Around the wagon wheel as she struggled to lift it. The wood groaned under her weight. "You need some help?" a calm voice asked. She started, looking up. A man stood nearby, hat low, eyes steady beneath the brim. I'm managing," she said, voice tight. "You'll strain yourself," he said, stepping closer. "Don't worry. I've got it." He knelt, lifting the wheel with ease. She watched, hesitant, unsure why someone offered kindness without scorn. "Thank you," she whispered. Her hands hovered near the wheel, afraid to touch. "No trouble at all," he said. "Name's Samuel. And you?" "Ella," she replied, dusting her skirt, still uncertain. You live around here? He asked, wiping sweat from his brow. I, I stay just past the edge, she said quietly. Samuel nodded, examining the wheel. Looks like the axle's loose. We can fix it together. She handed him a wrench, hands trembling slightly. I can hold it steady. He smiled faintly. That'll help. The sun beat down, orange and harsh, glinting off the metal. Crickets stirred in the grass nearby. Dust clung to their boots as they worked side by side. Where'd you learn this? She asked, watching him tighten bolts with practiced care. Ranch work, he said. Everything's a lesson if you pay attention. She nodded, lips pressed together. I've never tried much. Not outside chores at home. Home can teach a lot, he said, glancing at her. Sometimes more than folks know. They paused, wiping hands on worn trousers. The air smelled of hay and dry grass. She noticed the steadiness in his gaze, a calm she hadn't seen in the town. Ella, he said gently, if you ever need work or a place to stay, the barn's big enough. Her heart thumped. I don't know, she murmured. No rush, he said. Just know the offer's there. She watched him mount his horse. The leather creaked under the saddle, the reins clutched firmly in his hands. You ride well, she said, more a statement than a question. Steady enough, he replied, eyes meeting hers briefly. Don't let the town's harshness cloud your path. Folks like that, they talk, but it doesn't define you. She lowered her gaze, breath catching. I'm not used to someone saying that. That's because not many do, he said quietly. The horse shifted beneath him, hooves pressing into the dusty ground. Samuel, she began, hesitating. Thank you. For helping. He tipped his hat slightly. You'll manage fine. But remember, a little help now and then doesn't hurt anyone. Dust swirled around him as he rode toward the horizon, the sunset casting long shadows across the field. She stayed at the wagon, hand resting lightly on the wheel, feeling a strange warmth. Maybe, she whispered to herself, maybe it's possible to be safe. A breeze tugged at the dry grasses, carrying the scent of hay and distant pine. Her fingers lingered on the metal, listening to the echo of Samuel's horse fading into the distance. The wind shifted, scattering dust across the path. She straightened, shoulders squared beneath the shawl. The town's cruel words seemed smaller now, less heavy. She inhaled the sharp evening air, letting it fill her chest. I can keep going, she murmured, determination threading through the ache of humiliation still lingering from the market. The last light dipped behind the hills, lanterns beginning to glow faintly in town. Samuel's figure was gone, but the quiet promise of his presence lingered. For the first time in a long while, she felt a spark of hope. Tomorrow, she thought, could be different. Her mother's voice cut across the small kitchen. What could a quiet girl like you do on a ranch? I could manage, she said softly, clutching the tattered shawl. Manage? You can barely carry a bucket without spilling it, her father added, eyes narrowing. She swallowed, heart pounding. I need to leave. Just for a while. Leave, her mother scoffed, turning back to the stove. Go where? To that wandering cowboy. Yes, she whispered, voice trembling. He offered a place, a chance to work. Please. Her brother laughed, sharp and cruel. You'd be laughed out of any barn. You're too slow, too clumsy. I have to try, she said, stepping toward the door, fists clenched at her sides. Dust swirled around her boots as she pushed it open. Outside, the sun hung low, fiery over the horizon, casting long shadows across the town. Rolling fields stretched toward distant mountains, and the smell of dry grass and hay filled her senses. Ella, a voice called softly. She looked up to see Samuel, hat tipped low, reins resting lightly in his hands. You came. I didn't want to stay, she said, voice quiet but firm. I need something else. He offered a small nod. Then we'll start slow. Come on. The barn is ready, and the horses await. She followed, boots crunching over dry earth. I don't know much about ranch work, she admitted. Then you'll learn, he said gently.
Step by step.
No rush. The barn loomed ahead, its wooden boards creaking as the wind pushed against them. Samuel led her inside. See the colt? He asked, motioning toward a small brown horse pawing at the straw. I've never fed one, she said, hesitating. Just reach slowly, let it smell your hand first. His voice was calm, steady. She extended her hand, colt sniffing, eyes wide. She nearly stumbled, spilling a bucket of oats, but his hand steadied her. Easy, he said. You'll be fine. I thank you, she whispered. Her cheeks burned, but not from shame. From relief. Everyone starts somewhere, he said. Even me. The wind rattled the barn boards, carrying dust and hay into the corners. She swept the floor carefully, Samuel nearby, showing her how to tie knots and lift bales. Every small task felt monumental, yet possible. Can I do more tomorrow? She asked, hesitating. You can do as much as you feel ready for, he replied. I'll be here. She paused, looking at the wooden beams overhead, the lanterns swinging faintly, casting soft light across the straw.
I
think I can stay, she said finally, voice steadier than she expected. Good, Samuel said, voice low but firm. That's all anyone asks. One step at a time. She fed the colt again, shaking slightly, then straightened. Dust clung to her skirt and boots, sweat beading at her hairline. She glanced at Samuel. I didn't think someone would help me. Not everyone is cruel, he said. Some of us notice when someone struggles. She nodded, swallowing. I want to learn.
Then you will, he said.
And when you're ready, you'll stand taller than the town ever imagined. The last light slipped below the horizon, turning the sky violet and gold. Lanterns flickered in the barn, illuminating straw and wood, casting long, soft shadows. She lay on the bed of straw, chest rising and falling slowly, hands resting lightly on her lap. I can do this, she whispered to herself. The warmth of the lantern above mingled with the fading sun outside. For the first time in years, the weight of ridicule felt distant. Outside, the wind whispered through the barn boards. Dust settled around her, carrying the faint scent of hay and the distant mountains. Tomorrow, she thought, could be a different life. A quiet hope threaded through her chest as she closed her eyes, the shadow of the town replaced by the calm steadiness of Samuel's promise. Now, don't rush. She gripped the bucket, water sloshing slightly, and nodded. Like this? Better. Steady hands, that's all. He stepped back, letting her manage the small task herself. I didn't think I could, she admitted, boots sinking slightly into the soft dirt. You can, he said quietly.
Step by step.
That's how it's done. A horse whinnied nearby, dew sparkling on its hooves. Sunlight turned the dust into gold, drifting lazily across the corral. She smiled faintly, eyes tracing the light on the fence posts. You notice things others miss, Samuel said, watching her. That's strength. She lowered the bucket, brushing dirt from her skirt. I never felt strong before. You've been strong all along, he said. You just didn't know it. A small voice called from the gate. Hi, I'm Tommy. Can I watch? She blinked, unsure. I suppose. Tommy stepped inside, curious eyes wide. Do you ride often? Not yet, she said, glancing at Samuel. But I'll try. Samuel nodded. Start with the colt. Let him get used to you first. She approached cautiously, hands out, and the colt sniffed her fingers. Tommy laughed softly. You're good with him. I'm learning, she admitted. The colt nuzzled her hand, and she laughed quietly, the sound small but warm. Samuel adjusted the reins, giving gentle directions.
See?
You're doing fine. Later, she knelt by the barn, mending a torn shirt. Could I do this better? She asked, threading needle carefully. You're doing just right, Samuel said. Care, patience, that's enough for now. Her hands moved steadily, the stitch line neat. It feels good to fix something, she murmured. You're capable, he said softly. You'll see it more each day. She set aside the shirt and polished her worn boots, dust and scratches fading under her careful hands. I think I can keep going. You can, Samuel said, voice steady as the wind brushing through the barn. No one's judging here but yourself. Tommy leaned on the fence, watching her. You work hard. Most folks back home would laugh at a mess like that. She shrugged lightly, faint blush on her cheeks. I'm used to it. But here it feels different. Samuel glanced toward the distant road. A rider approached, hat tilted low, sneering. Dust lifted under the horse's hooves, carrying the echo of judgment. Ignore them, Samuel said, voice firm. The town's words don't reach here. Not if you don't let them. She nodded, brushing straw from her skirt. I can focus on what matters here. The sun dipped lower, warm amber light spilling across the barn, lanterns swinging faintly. The colt nudged her shoulder, curious, and she laughed, brushing its nose gently. You see, Samuel said, voice soft, small steps become strength. Each act matters. I think I understand, she said, smiling more openly than before. Hands resting on the colt's mane, she felt a quiet pride swelling, unfamiliar but welcome. Tommy waved. See you tomorrow?
Yes, she said.
I think I'll be here. The rider passed by, distant and sneering, but she didn't falter. She straightened, shawl over her shoulders, the smell of hay and warm earth filling her senses. I'm getting stronger, she whispered to herself. The barn, the colt, the soft wind, all reminders that kindness and effort could grow into courage. As the sun sank behind the mountains, lanterns flickered in the barn. She knelt, hands resting on the polished boots, listening to the wind through the boards. Tomorrow, she thought, could be even brighter. The fence. What could a girl like that do with horses? She'll ruin herself trying, another voice added. She tightened her shawl, chest rising and falling, watching from the edge of the street. The whispers stung, but she didn't look away. Don't pay them any mind, Samuel said quietly, stepping close. His hat shaded calm, steady eyes. They talk anyway, she whispered, voice tight. They talk, but words don't hurt if you stand firm, he replied. A group of boys laughed from across the street. Hey, slowpoke. Come show us your riding skills. She flinched, stepping back, but Samuel moved in front of her, hands relaxed but firm at his sides. Leave her be, he said calmly. There's no fun in cruelty. The boys hesitated, unsure, before muttering under their breath and walking away. She blinked, watching him. You don't yell, or push, you just stop them? Steadiness works better than anger, he said softly. Courage isn't always loud. Her hands curled around the edges of the torn dress she still wore, frayed and patched. I've always hidden, she admitted. I never said anything back. You can, Samuel said gently. One step at a time. The air smelled of dust and hay, sunlight turning it golden as it spilled over the wooden boards of the street. A horse's hooves clattered distantly, adding rhythm to the tense quiet. I will not stay silent anymore, she said, voice trembling but firm. Heads turned. A few townsfolk whispered behind their hands. Did you hear that? A woman said, eyes wide. She actually spoke. Better keep her busy at that barn, another muttered. She might start thinking she's more than she is. She lit the lantern at the edge of the porch, its soft glow casting long shadows over her hands and the torn hem of her dress. The flickering light reflected her struggle between the shame taught by the town and the dignity she was beginning to claim. I can do this, she whispered to herself, hands steady now, eyes focused on the flame. At the general store, she passed carefully, basket of supplies clutched to her chest. A man sneered from the doorway. What do you need, slowpoke? More lessons in running errands. Her cheeks burned, but she kept her head high. I am capable, she said softly. Samuel stepped beside her, hand brushing hers briefly, steadying her. Ignore them, he murmured. You've already shown more strength today than they ever will. I I won't be afraid, she whispered, taking a deep breath. The man's mouth twisted into a sneer, but no words followed. She moved past him, the basket swinging lightly against her side. Samuel stayed close, silent support in the chaos of judgment. A child peeked from behind a barrel. She's brave, the boy said quietly. Yes, she replied softly, voice gaining strength. I can be brave. Outside, the wind stirred dust along the street, brushing against boots and skirts, carrying the quiet tension like a whisper through the town. She held the torn dress, lantern light reflecting gold against the fabric, and realized she had claimed a small victory. I can face them, she said to Samuel, eyes steady. I can be seen without fear. He nodded, quiet and steady.
Exactly.
Every step counts. And you've taken one today. The sun dipped lower behind the rooftops, lanterns flickering along the street. Judgment lingered, whispered and pointed, but she felt it lighter than before. The torn dress, the flickering lantern, symbols of both struggle and newfound dignity, remained in her hands. She glanced toward the general store once more, heart steady. The sneer awaited, but she would not flinch. Not anymore. You can't do that. A drunken man slurred from the edge of the square, swaying as he stepped toward her. She froze, heart pounding, shawl clutched tight. I haven't done anything, she whispered. You think you're better than the rest of us? He growled, raising a fist. Samuel's voice rang out calmly but firmly. Step back. Now. The man faltered, eyes narrowing, confusion and anger warring on his face. Let me pass, she said quietly, trying to step around him. No, he snarled. You're nothing but Enough, Samuel said, moving between them, hands relaxed but unyielding. She isn't nothing. You've had your fun. Step aside before you regret it. The man blinked, swaying, then muttered under his breath and stumbled away, the crowd murmuring in awe. She exhaled slowly, fingers trembling. He could have hurt me, she whispered, voice low. And he would have if I let him, Samuel said. But you're safe now. That's what matters. A child peered from behind a barrel. She didn't cry, the boy said softly. No, she admitted, voice steadying. I didn't. Samuel guided her toward a fire crackling in a small corral nearby. Sit, he said, voice gentle. Rest for a while. She sank onto the straw, watching the flames lick the cold night air. Sparks drifted like tiny stars, shadows dancing across the barn walls. I never thought anyone would stand up for me, she murmured. You don't have to prove yourself to them, Samuel said, sitting beside her. You only need to be yourself. Her fingers traced the edge of a scarf he placed around her shoulders. This is yours, she asked softly.
For you, he said.
Keeps you warm. And reminds you you're not alone. She inhaled the scent of worn leather and hay that clung to him. I feel safe, she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. You should, he said quietly, eyes reflecting the firelight. You've earned the right to feel safe. They watched the embers drift upward, orange and gold against the fading twilight. The wind whispered through the barn boards, carrying distant hints of dust and pine. I don't know if full dignity will ever return, she said, scarf wrapped tight. Can people ever really see me as I am? Samuel shrugged lightly, voice calm. Some may never see it, but that doesn't change who you are. One day more will. She traced the folds of the scarf, heart steadying, hope threading through the fear. I
want to believe that, she said.
Then believe, he said, voice soft. That's all it takes for now. She leaned slightly toward him, embers reflecting in her wide eyes. Thank you for seeing me. I always have, he replied, tipping his hat slightly, shadow falling across his steady gaze. The night settled fully over the ranch, lanterns flickering faintly, dust stirring with the breeze. She gazed toward the horizon, distant mountains dark against the violet sky, a quiet resolve stirring in her chest. I will keep trying, she whispered to herself. I will not let them define me. Samuel's hand brushed hers lightly, a promise of protection and trust, and she felt the first warmth of true belonging in years. The fire crackled, sending a shower of sparks skyward. She held the scarf tighter, eyes on the horizon. The town's whispers still existed, but for the first time, they no longer held power over her. Hope lingered in the amber glow, and she knew that tomorrow, the journey toward full dignity would continue. Lanterns swinging above wooden stalls, dust stirring under boots and wagon wheels. She stood near the fountain, hands clutching her shawl, heart pounding. "They let her near the wedding?" a woman hissed, voice sharp as scissors. "Why bother? She'll just make a fool of herself," another muttered, elbowing her neighbor. She trembled, eyes scanning the crowd. I have to face it," she whispered, jaw tight. A man stepped forward, sneering. "Look at you, thinking you belong here." I belong where I choose," she said, voice quivering but steadying. Heads turned, whispers rippling like wind through the stalls. Samuel moved to stand beside her, hat tipped low, eyes calm but firm. "That's enough," he said. "No one here has the right to shame her." "She's just a maid," someone shouted, laughter laced with cruelty. "And yet," Samuel said, voice carrying across the square, "she has more dignity in her smallest gesture than some of you have in a lifetime of words." Gasps ran through the crowd. She felt her chest rise with nervous pride. I am not afraid," she said, stepping forward, hands trembling but shawl secure. "Afraid?" a man scoffed. "You? You're nothing." "I may have been nothing to you," she said, voice gaining strength, "but I have worth, and I will not be mocked any longer." Samuel's hand brushed hers briefly, grounding her. "See," he said softly, "strength does not always shout. Sometimes it stands quietly and firmly." The whispers shifted, curiosity threading through the mockery. She speaks like a lady," a child murmured. "Yes," she said softly, meeting the small voice's eyes. "And I will not hide anymore." A woman gasped, clutching her apron. "Didn't we all overlook her? All these years." "Overlooked," Samuel said firmly. "She was always here, tending, working, learning. But you were too busy judging to notice." I never knew," a man muttered, head lowered. "I have lived quietly," she said, eyes sweeping the square. "But my life, my efforts, they matter. They always have." A silence fell. The only sound was the wind rattling lanterns, dust drifting across boots and skirts. She straightened, feeling the weight of the shawl and her own resolve. "She has courage," a child whispered. "Real courage." "And integrity," Samuel added, voice steady as the sun dipping behind distant mountains. "Do not mistake quiet for weakness. She is stronger than most here ever knew." She lifted her chin, gaze calm, breath steady. I will no longer let the town define me. My worth is mine to claim." Heads turned, some in shock, others murmuring in shame. The fountain's water glistened, reflecting sunlight and lantern glow, casting fractured light across the square. A horse whinnied in the distance, a soft reminder of the ranch beyond the town, the life she had begun to build. The whispers faltered, the sneers quieted. Samuel's presence anchored her. Her shawl caught the golden light, torn edges symbolizing past hardship, yet vibrant with endurance. I am not just a shadow," she said softly, voice carrying over the square. "I am myself. And that is enough." The crowd fell silent, dust settling, lanterns swinging gently. The town had witnessed her courage, her dignity, and the moral truth standing beside her. For the first time, she felt the weight of judgment lift, replaced with quiet respect, curiosity, and awe. Tomorrow, the town would see her differently, and she finally could stand tall on wheels, lanterns flickering against wooden storefronts. She walked calmly, shawl neatly draped, hair brushed, boots polished. You're the girl from the market?" a woman whispered, voice trembling. "You look different." "I am still the same," she said softly, standing tall. But I am no longer afraid. Her brother stepped forward, face flushed with shame. We didn't treat you right, he muttered. You barely noticed me at all, she replied evenly, eyes steady. But I forgive what was ignorance and fear. That is enough. Samuel stood beside her, hat tilted low, eyes calm and unwavering. Her strength has always been here, he said quietly. Now you can see it too. The mother's hand shook, clutching a cloth. We didn't mean. You didn't listen, she said, voice firm but gentle. Listen now. I have worth. I always have. A child peeked from behind a barrel, eyes wide. She's brave, the boy whispered. Yes, she said, kneeling slightly to smooth the dust from a polished boot. And I've learned that courage isn't loud. It's quiet, steady, and true. A few townsfolk murmured apologies. We were wrong, one man admitted, tipping his hat. Another woman nodded, voice hesitant. It's true. You've always been strong. She glanced toward the restored dress she wore, its fabric gleaming in sunlight. The past doesn't vanish, she said softly, but we can step into what is right. Samuel brushed a hand over the colt nearby, eyes on her. You've earned every bit of respect, he said. It isn't given lightly, but it is yours. I feel it, she admitted, voice catching slightly, but steady. Not from fear, not from pity, but from truth. Her father shuffled forward, face heavy with regret. I should have protected you, he said quietly. You didn't, she said, eyes softening. But I've found protection elsewhere. That is enough. A group of children, previously mocking, gathered at a distance. She's amazing, one whispered. Yes, she said, voice warm. And you can learn from her example. Courage doesn't mean harming others. It means standing tall even when others try to push you down. Samuel nodded, hands resting lightly on her shoulder. And she has done it with dignity, not anger. That is what makes her strong. The town square fell silent, the hum of whispered recognition filling the air. Lanterns swung gently in the evening breeze, dust drifting across polished boots and straw-covered street. She looked toward the horizon, sunlight glinting off distant mountains, casting gold across her face. The restored dress caught the light, and the boots she polished reflected the warm glow, symbols of her growth, patience, and regained dignity. A soft breeze carried the scent of hay and dust. She inhaled deeply, feeling peace settle over her. I am finally seen, she murmured, eyes scanning the town, lingering on each face. And I am safe here. I belong. Samuel's quiet smile reassured her, steady and calm. Yes, he said simply. You belong and you are respected. That can be permanent. Her shawl shifted in the breeze as she stepped closer to the fence, hands resting on the wood. Horses stirred in the nearby corral, hooves tapping softly against dirt. I forgive, she whispered to herself, voice low but full of warmth. And I will continue forward, without fear, without doubt. Children's eyes followed her, wide and curious. Adults muttered in awe and shame. But she stood tall, calm, and proud, a quiet victory radiating from her every movement. Dust settled, lanterns flickered, and sunlight turned the town square to gold. She turned her gaze toward the ranch beyond, mountains dark against a glowing sky, and felt a deep, enduring sense of hope. I am free, she said softly, voice blending with the wind. Free to be myself, free to be respected, free to be happy. Samuel tipped his hat slightly, eyes reflecting the sunset. And that is exactly what you deserve, he said. She rested her hands on the fence, breathing in the warm evening air, sunlight glinting across her boots and shawl. The town, once cruel and unforgiving, now watched in quiet acknowledgement. Her journey had led her here, to dignity, recognition, and the promise of safety. And for the first time, she smiled fully, knowing that true redemption and belonging were hers to keep. The sun makes them grow faster, she said softly, voice carrying in the warm breeze. A child nearby laughed. They look happy. Like you. I'm learning, she admitted, wiping her palms on her skirt. And the plants, they listen better than people sometimes. Samuel leaned on the fence, watching quietly. They always respond to care, he said, voice low. Just like some people if you give them time. She smiled, looking up. You mean even the town? They'll follow when they're ready, he said, tipping his hat. Not everyone, but enough to matter. A wagon rattled past on the dusty road. Morning chores done? Asked the shopkeeper, stopping briefly. Yes, ma'am, she said, steady and calm. The animals are fed, the water drawn. Good work, the woman said, eyes softening. You've changed. Or maybe you've always been this strong. She glanced at Samuel, who nodded slightly. I've learned what strength feels like, she said. It isn't loud. It's steady, patient kind. Her boots glinted in the sunlight, polished and free of dust for once. She traced the edges of her shawl, now whole and warm. I can't believe how far I've come, she whispered. A group of children ran past, calling greetings. Hello, one shouted. Hello, she replied, voice bright, smiling freely. No fear lingered now. Samuel worked nearby, mending a fence post. You look at peace, he said without turning. I feel it, she said, eyes on the horizon, golden light spilling over the mountains. Not because everyone sees me as I am, but because I do. The lantern she kept near the barn reflected the sunlight, glass glowing amber. She glanced at it, remembering the nights of quiet fear, and now of calm warmth. Do you think they understand? She asked, voice soft. Some do, Samuel said. Others may never, but that doesn't matter anymore. You've earned your place and you know it. A horse nickered from the corral. She patted its flank gently. I've learned to care, she said. And that has made all the difference. A few townsfolk paused in the road, watching. Some nodded, hesitant, others whispered, but none dared mock. She nodded back, calm, unafraid. I'm ready for whatever comes, she said, brushing dirt from her hands, because I know who I am now. Samuel leaned against the post beside her, shoulder brushing hers. No words were needed. Their quiet companionship said all that mattered. The children laughed, chasing each other through dust and sunbeams. Even the most critical onlookers softened slightly, watching her tend the ranch with ease and dignity. I have hope now, she whispered. Hope that I can live fully, freely, kindly. Samuel nodded, eyes on the horizon, brim of his hat shading a small smile. And that hope is well-deserved. The sun sank lower, painting the sky gold and rose. She rested her hands on the fence, polished boots firmly planted, shawl warm on her shoulders, and let the wind stir through her hair. Tomorrow, we'll tend the fields again, she said, voice steady and bright. And I'll face it all, whatever comes. Together, Samuel said quietly. She turned toward him, the wind carrying dust and promise alike. Together, she repeated. The horizon glowed in quiet warmth, the outcast no longer afraid, the town no longer threatening. Safety, dignity, and hope had settled over her like a soft, golden light. And for the first time in her life, she smiled fully, heart unburdened, ready for the life ahead.